to the Powerful Panels podcast. This is Kristin Arnold, and I am on a crusade to make all panels lively and informative. And this week, we are talking about how to have a first and lasting impression on a panel discussion, regardless of whether you are the panel moderator or the panelist. And this week, we have my dear friend, Sylvie di Giusto, who I have to tell you, I admire this woman so much because she has style and grace and passion, and she knows about first and lasting impressions. If anyone does, Sylvie di Giusto is always making a great impression. And so thank you so much, Sylvie, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I wish I would have you with me giving that introduction every time I walk out somewhere. Where can I buy that service, please, Kristin?
Yeah, well, you know, I would love to be your comrade. So compatriot, however we go, let's go arm in arm down this journey about talking about panels, which are pervasive in many, many meeting formats. And specifically for panel moderators and panelists, what are your general overview ideas? Because this is way out of my lane. I wear a black blazer and a blue shirt for the most part. What are your general thoughts for what panelists and panel moderators should do to make a good first impression and lasting impression?
Allow me to go one step back and share with you how we actually make a first impression and lasting impression, and then what we can do as a panel moderator or a panelist to make a great one. We know from several studies that it has nothing to do with the fact if you are a good human being or a bad human being. We just instantly judge each other. The moment we see somebody, we think we know something about that person, right? We are visual creatures. We just look because our brains are actually quite lazy. They don't want to work, so they take a shortcut through our eyes. And so some studies says it happens in 7 seconds. Other studies says it happens in a millisecond. Some say 10 milliseconds. It really doesn't matter how long, but it happens.
It's quick.
Yeah, it's quick. You walk out on stage and you sit down, and without even saying a word, people think that they already know about something about you. And then, unfortunately, a very powerful source is either working for you or against you. And those sources are called unconscious biases. For example, confirmation bias. People are looking for confirmation. If they see something sloppy in you, they're going to find that sloppiness later in your behavior, how you sit on your chair, how you talk, maybe in the materials that you provided in the handouts, because their brain is looking for them. And so there are around 185 different unconscious biases that can work against you. And in order to make a first and a lasting impression to your favor, what I encourage you is to make them work for you. And there is just one simple rule as a panelist or panel host is do your homework. That's all. We could stop here, right? Because that is the most important one. Don't just walk out there and give them the power to create your first impression and your lasting impression. Do your homework and prepare.
Okay, so what does that mean specifically, Sylvie? If I'm a panelist or a panel moderator, how do I prepare? What kind of homework are you talking about?
You are basically serving 4 different types of people when you go out on stage. First and foremost, and that is the most important one, you serve yourself. Do not wear or do not behave and do not communicate in any way that makes you feel uncomfortable. Confidence is your best designer. There is no dress, no designer, no outfit, no makeup tip that I could give you that is better than you walk out there as the best version of yourself. So even if 20, 30 years ago, we had rules like you have to wear a suit to be perceived as professional. If a suit is not your thing, don't force yourself into a navy blue charcoal gray pinstripe suit, right? So first and foremost, I always want you to think about yourself. However, there is another party very important involved in this, and that is your host, because you do not only represent yourself, you also represent the person who invited you to be on that panel, or who invited you to be the panel host, right? And their reputation is also dependent on you. If you walk out there in any way that is offensive to the host, or the host will be questioned afterward about your appearance, your behavior, or your communication, you have done something wrong. So in terms of preparation, prepare. How do you feel most confident and most yourself? And what expectations does your host possibly have? And then there is the third group, which is obviously the audience. And you already mentioned it in the conversation we had, dress above the audience. And that is a very good tip. And I'm going to add to your tip, dress in a way that your outfit becomes invisible. The moment that they notice your clothing, you usually have done something wrong. Because you want to be known for your excellence, you want to be known for your knowledge, you want to be known for the added value that you bring to that panel, right? You don't want to be known first and foremost for your outfit or for your hairstyle or your makeup. So I would say dress in a way that represents you best possible, but in the best way, it's invisible because it's not something people talk about. And then last but not least, and that's the most unusual, usually, especially if you're a new panelist, not so much if you're a host, because you're experienced, you also have to serve the AV team. And the AV team, for those that don't know, is the audiovisual team. Those are the ladies and the guys in the back room. And without them, nothing is going to happen. Without them, no panel is going to happen. And they have usually very practical things like, where is your microphone going to be? Where are you going to clip it on? What light are they using? How do your colors appear? Do you have shine? Does it make noise? So they are very sensitive to more practical things, and you want to avoid any trouble for them, right? You want to make their life as easy as possible. So those are the four groups you should prepare for: yourself, your host, whom you also represent, your audience, and the AV team.
I love that. So you're trying to hit all four, that sweet spot. I'm going to add one other to the AV team is the backdrop color.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
You don't want to fade into the backdrop. So I want to unpack a couple of things because, you know, as I'm listening to your brilliance, I think that's a great way to look at things, Sylvie. So when I look at, you know, you wearing something that makes you feel confident and comfortable, don't project yourself to be something other than you are, that, you know, to try to be as authentic and to like, I'm going to fall back to clothing or your makeup or your hairstyle or something. Don't try something new. Mm-hmm. Don't try something that you feel uncomfortable in, but something that brings you confidence. Right. So I guess I'm wondering, how do you know that you're wearing just the right thing, or that you're projecting yourself just the right way to yourself?
Mm-hmm. So most people don't know, but every single person has something I call an image DNA, right? There are 7 different image DNAs, categories you can fit into. And if you want to try it out, I give you a link. You can find out which one you fit into. It's my website, sylviedigjusto.com/audit. Maybe you can put it somewhere into the show.
We'll put it right here.
Yeah, it's a free assessment that you can take, and then it has a lot to do with the wardrobe choices you would make, but also which car would you buy, how do people describe you, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and what I help you to do with that audit is to visualize that. Let's just take the two of us, right, to visualize that. I would probably think that if you go through that assessment, that your category that you end up is something I call the traditionalist. Traditionalists have those are high value people. Trust is, for example, a value that is very important to them. Family is a very important value to them. To be reliable is a very important value to them. They are fantastic in any corporate environment because they grew up with very traditional values where parents told them, this is the way we dress, this is the way we behave, this is the way we communicate. Would you agree with me?
I would. The military probably had something to do with contributing to that. But yeah.
So if that is your primary image DNA, that means you also showcase that in your appearance. You will never wear something that is too short or too tight. You feel uncomfortable in colors that are too bright and too loud and patterns that are too loud. If I would go into your wardrobe, I would find a lot of navy blue, charcoal gray, beige. If you wear heels, then I know they are probably not pointed toe, rounded toe with a block heel. You would wear hosiery underneath your dresses. Burberry is a brand that you feel attracted to. Brooks Brothers is a store where you would go in. So the way you visualize those things are very clear to me because I know that you are in this category. I'm in a very different category. I'm in a category called the cosmopolitan/dramatic. I want to go into a room and here I am. Everybody's got to see me, right? So my color palette, my patterns, my styles, my cuts are very different from yours. If I would go into your wardrobe, I would probably find something that somehow has some dramatic element, but it's still not me. And that's why sometimes we go in stores, right? And we buy something that we think, this could work, but we never feel comfortable, super confident in it. While we go into other stores that have clothes that are designed for our category, and we wear them forever and again and again and again, while the other piece dies a lonely life or has a lonely life.
So I think understanding your DNA, and I love that audit. Thank you for sharing that. And is that in your book, more information about that?
In the next book.
Oh, when is that coming out, Sylvie?
In spring 2022.
Ooh, and what's the name of it?
The Fair Advantage. Discover your fair advantage.
Ooh, I can't wait. Can't wait. Okay.
The audit is already there, so give it a try, and then you will understand who you are and what you actually feel confident in, and just skip the rest. Why bother with the rest, right?
I love that. Okay, but Sylvie, you just said something, you're a cosmopolitan. You like to walk into a room and go, hello, which you do, by the way. And I love the pieces that you wear. I would never wear them because I'm a traditionalist, obviously. But you also said one of the things that we want to do is be invisible to the audience and not have a standout piece that makes that the reason why they're talking about you. You want them to be talking about your eloquence, your expertise, the takeaway value that you brought. So how do you balance that when you've got a little bit of that showman quality that you want? I mean, we all want to stand out to a certain extent, but how do you balance that?
It's always the balance, and there is always a range, right? If I'm the host of a panel, I would say, give it a little bit of a push, right? That you stand out a little bit more. Maybe you are not the one in a charcoal gray suit in between the other 4 charcoal gray suits and dresses, right? If you are a participant, why not? But with invisible, I don't mean invisible in that people don't see you, but I want them to hear you first and then possibly see you. I'm the opposite. Since this is my area of expertise, if I would walk out in something, let's just say average or boring, those who know me or know my brand would be
shocked,
right? And it would be a distraction. I'm just saying avoid distraction for any price. The moment they are thinking about your hair, your makeup, your shoes, the way you sit on a panel, you are not doing yourself a favor because you want them to listen to you.
Okay, so I'm thinking about panels that I've witnessed, and I'm sure you're probably thinking about panels that you're witnessed. And, the too short skirt and you cross your legs wrong, the guy who's got or gal who's got a hole at the bottom of their shoe.
Yes.
People who are, wearing something that is shows too much skin, let's just put it that way. Or you want to add anything else to that list?
Here are a few things you can prepare. One you already said is the backdrop. First of all, what do I have behind me? If there is a black backdrop with a black dress, difficult, right? Then you're going to be a floating head all the time for the audience members. But there is a little bit more to it. If you can find out about the stage, what view are people going to have? Are they going to have a front view because the stage and where you sit is on the same level like your audience? Are they going to have a side view? Are there people on the side too that see you? Are they going to have a bottom view because you are up there and they sit down there? Or are they going to have a top view? You are at the bottom and they are up there. That makes a huge difference on how my éclatage, for example, will be perceived. What looks great to you in the mirror might not look as appropriate from up there, while it wouldn't matter at all if they sit down there. So it's not, of course, you are always in a safe space when you just cover up, but we all know we don't always want to cover up. So next to the backdrop, also prepare how are people seated in relation to you? Do they see you from above? Do they see you from the bottom, right? Then in terms of clothing, also, how do you sit? You mentioned it. A dress can be very difficult if you sit on a chair that is very low because your knees go up, while a dress can work if you sit on a bar stool where you probably have your legs down. So it always depends. There is no one size fits all formula. The same is true for colors of your clothing, right? Now let's go into the AV team things. What they want to avoid is, for example, low contrast. If the panel is going to be filmed, low contrast colors are really difficult. What does that mean? You wear a navy blue jacket with a blue or a gray blouse. That is a low contrast, very difficult for lighting and for cameras to catch. High contrast, fantastic. Navy blue, white shirt, navy blue, pink shirt, navy blue with a high contrast. They want to avoid shine for any price, right? Everything that is sparkly, difficult to light. I mean, you can wear it, but a full sequin dress is just a lot to take in, not just for the AV team, but also for the audience, right? They want to avoid sound. So ask them or prepare, where is going to be my microphone? If you have a headset microphone, all you have to worry about is jewelry, jewelry, earrings, for example, that can make sound and cluck all the time. But it's the microphone here, you have to think of ruffles that are moving, fabrics that are moving. If you have a handheld microphone, you have to think of other things, right? What could make sound? Is it a bracelet that I probably won't hear if I have a headset microphone? They want to avoid patterns, especially small patterns are very difficult to catch. Not just with the camera, they also create sometimes a moire effect. If you remember very old TV, where it was difficult when you saw patterns that kind of swim around and moved.
Oh, yeah.
Effect. So if you go very small with your patterns, it's really difficult to watch you from the audience without getting a headache or dizzy, and for the AV team to capture you. They want to avoid everything that causes stress in you. So there are a lot of things that you can prepare up front to just limit the risk that there is any distraction.
So if the panel host, the person who invited you, doesn't give you that information, you should call them and get that information, right?
Absolutely. Because it's first and foremost your responsibility to make an impactful first impression and lasting impression.
Absolutely. Okay. So we've covered invisible to the audience. We've covered about how to be confident you. We've talked about the AV team. I want to dig a little bit deeper into this, the host, the person who invited you to the panel. How do we make sure that when we show up, that they're not thinking, oh my God, what was I thinking? Instead, they're like, oh my God, thank God Sylvie showed up. She's going to be great on this panel. I'm feeling so good about it. Like, how can we make sure that they know that they're in good hands?
Well, probably here the same, ask questions to understand the real requirements that person has. Ask them questions up front so that they can be sure already that you care. Then confirmation bias will already work in your favor because they know, oh, that
He took the time.
He took the time, right? And questions could be, who is going to be in the audience? Are there things you would like me to do or not to do, to wear or not to wear, to say or not to say? Give them the good feeling that you understood you are representing them too, and you want to avoid distraction or any errors for any price. They still can happen, but then at least they approach them with the mindset, she or he or they have done everything possible to avoid them, and well, then something went wrong. And I always say that envision in this kind, client possibly, your host could be your client or your customer because they pay there with an invisible hat that says, make me feel important. That's all they want, right? Make me feel important. Show me that you respect me in my role, and show me that you respect that I have the huge responsibility here to serve an audience of hundreds of people, and my reputation is on the table if something goes wrong on the stage. Because the audience members are not going to complain to the panelists. Who are they going to complain to? To the host, right?
Right. And to each other.
And to each other. That's the worst, if we don't even find out what we did wrong.
Okay, so what are some specifics about how we can make that host feel, how did you phrase it? Feel like like this was the greatest thing?
I think to go in there with the mindset that you are a servant. You serve them to create a memorable experience on stage. You are not there because it's for you and your knowledge. And, we speakers, myself included, we very often fall into the trap that it's about us, but it's actually about the guests there and the audience, and you are a representation of the host. And so it's for me, the host and the AV team are the two most important components that I try to make feel that I care about them as much as they should care about me. I think that's a give and take here, right? And the AV team will serve you much better and will have much more an eye on what's happening on the stage if you show them right from the beginning that you understand that without them, nothing's going to happen here in this room.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And a couple of Starbucks gift cards are a good way to seal that deal. Like, have this on me thank you.
Yes.
So let's I really appreciate that 4 legs of the chair, or whatever kind of model, but kind of making sure that you're going to have a good first impression. And that's so important because, as you said, people will shut down if they don't think that they know you or trust you. But let's now move into, how do you have a lasting impression? So we're now past the first 7 seconds, however long it takes for people to decide, is this a valuable use of my time or not? How can a panelist or a moderator really make a good lasting impression, Sylvie?
Here's a very practical tip. First, I want you to imagine I would ask you now to learn a list of 20 terms. I give you 20 terms that you have to memorize. Which one would you probably still know in 10 days from that list?
The first one and the last one.
Ha! Exactly. And with that mindset, I want you to approach that question, right? Very often as panelists, it's very usual that the panel host tells us what the first question is going to be, right? Just to prepare us a little bit. I always also ask, what is the last question to be? To leave them with a big bang. Because we know, it's called the primary and the decency effect, that our brain immediately captures the first things that are going to happen, right? Also, same with that list that I just told you. But we are going to remember for longer and deeper how we leave people behind. Compare it also with a shopping experience you have. You can go into a retail store and you can buy something and can be totally impressed by the sales representative there who sold it to you, by the product. But if you go home and open that thing and it's broken, all of that at the beginning will be not forgotten, but will be kind of flavored by the fact that now it doesn't work, now I have to go back. So in terms of making a first and lasting impression, first of all, there are many touch points in between, right? It's not just the first and the last. You can mess it up at any given moment, or you can confirm that you are amazing at any given moment too. But very important for the lasting impression is the last impression. How do you leave them behind? Because this is what they are going to remember you for. And in terms of the first impression, one side note, unfortunately, for many in the audience, it will be true that your first impression doesn't happen on the stage as a panelist. You make it long before. They are going to see on the website. Which picture do you use? There, right? If they introduce you, you might be in the program, in the brochures, in the material that they send out. Some might even search your name and look you up. Some might click on your LinkedIn profile because the event host linked to it. So long before you are in that room and on stage as a panelist or a panel host, people possibly already made up their mind about you.
Oh, that's deep. So you want to take a look at the promotional materials that people are using, whether they grabbed a photo from maybe your LinkedIn profile, or maybe you want to use a different one, or maybe you want to use a different bio that's more applicable to what you're talking about. So you want to control that narrative even before the panel. Or maybe you're actually involved in some social media outreach pieces that you're already talking to the audience about what they care about, what they want to talk about. So I think that that's a really, really good point, Sylvie, is to think it's not just about the panel, it's before, during, and after to make a lasting impression.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I love that, that idea that you should ask about the first question, which usually you get told what that first question is, whether it's the same across all the panelists, which I do not recommend, or it's specifically tailored to each panelist. But also that last one, which I agree with you. I think the last one should be new information. It should be something that you keep like 3 in your back pocket. Like if somebody else mentions it, well, or if it gets mentioned during the panel, I need to have something else that really makes that lasting impact.
Yes. And I mean, how often have we experienced that good panel hosts, they also want to leave with a big bang, right? And then they ask us with a very surprising question, right? Something that is totally out of nowhere, and it's great. It's great. You know, moments of surprise are great. And then you stumbled something and walked off stage, and later you said, I wish I would have said this, or I wish I would have answered this or that. So don't let them surprise you. Just ask them. Ask,
Yep.
What is the last question going to be?
Yeah. And most of the time, they will give you an inkling, unless they haven't thought it about themselves. There are plenty of panel moderators who are not doing the due diligence that you're doing even as a panelist, in which case I think your question prompts them to think about it a little bit further. So I think it's a win-win. Well, you know, Sylvie, I've really enjoyed our time together. Is there any last parting thoughts or words for our listeners that would help them not only have the first 5 seconds to make them count and to have a powerful first impression, but also how to create that lasting impression?
I have yet to meet an event host or audience member who would say, I did not enjoy you respectfully treating us.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that.
If you go into each of those spotlights you are in, no matter if you are the moderator, the panelist, or a speaker, if you approach it with respect, you're doing a very, very good job. Respect, first and foremost, for yourself, because you're the most important human being, and try to represent yourself, therefore, best possible. Respect to the person who invited you to take over the role, respect to the audience, and respect to the team in the background, from AV team to people who are going to serve you water in the green room, to everybody involved in this event. If you go in there with the mindset of showing respect to all of them, you are going to do better than probably 99% of people out there.
That is sage advice from the woman who I believe has not just a great first impression, but she leaves a lasting impression in whatever room, in person or virtual, that happens. Thank you so much, Sylvie. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, how would they?
They're going to find me on the internet. If you don't find me on the internet, you don't have internet. But wherever you type in my very complicated name, no matter the typos, don't worry about it, or anything around first impression, lasting impressions, you're going to stumble over my website, you will stumble over my LinkedIn account, my Instagram account, my YouTube channel. So I hope that you find me, or that Kristin and her team are so amazing and going to put it somewhere down here.
Absolutely.
Here.
You know, this woman is everywhere. The wonderful, marvelous, incredibly smart, talented Sylvie di Giusto. You can find her at www.sylviedigiusto.com. Thank you so much for joining us, and may all panels be powerful. Thanks so much.